Yeah, friends and colleagues, we are now going into the ocean space, or I often prefer to call it the ocean universe. And we will do it like this. We will have a keynote first by Christian Teleki. He will be with us on distance. He will paint a big picture. What's going on internationally? Where are we? What agreements have we recently reached? What are the trends? And that is a framing for the following discussion. We have the State Secretary from the Ministry, Trade, Industry and Fisheries here, Vidar Ulriksen. He will tell us something about the Norwegian policies on oceans. And then we have experts in the panel that will be debating different topics. But I will go straight ahead. I hope Christian is with us. He is. He's smiling. Good, Christian. So your task today is really to tell us what's going on out there when it comes to ocean and ocean policies and ocean expertise. And I should say that you are the global director of the program, Ocean Program in the World Resources Institute. You are heading the secretariat of the Ocean Panel, which is led by our Prime Minister in Norway, Jonas Gahr Støre. You also have many hats, one of them being active leading the Friends of Ocean Action in the World Economic Forum. So here we have a person that I think knows what's going on more or less everywhere when it concerns oceans. Please, Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jan Gunnar, and colleagues and friends. I'm so sorry not to be with you there in person. I was very much looking forward to actually seeing a bit more of Norway beyond what I often see in Oslo and Bergen. But nevertheless, I'm so glad I could be with you here today. Obviously, the theme of this conference is really around spaces of opportunities, and what great opportunity are we talking about here? We're talking about 2/3 of the planet, and often, when we think about this, we think about these amazing spaces, but we also think about this. I want you to think about this almost in terms of a moment or a window of opportunity when we talk about the ocean, and I'll get to that moment. I'm not going to dwell on any of the impacts or the challenges, the main challenges that are facing the ocean just yet, but I want to leave you with three things to think about when you leave this conference, when you go back to your offices, when you talk about the ocean, because I think it's important context when people start thinking about this. So first off, I have a slide here. This is what's called a spillhouse projection of the ocean, a different way of looking at the ocean. And you notice I'm saying ocean, singular. And I want you to think about this as a connected space. And I've put a little red dot of where you are all sitting at this moment to give a certain perspective of where this sits. So it's an ocean with many basins, but it's all connected. What happens in one ocean will inevitably affect another part, and one part of the ocean will affect another part of the ocean itself. So think about that. And often we think about this as a connected global Earth system. Secondly, for too long, the ocean has been out of sight and out of mind, and not thinking about the connectivity that it plays in our day-to-day lives. And so I've spent certainly a good deal of the last 5 years really trying to impress upon people about the different connections that you can make with the ocean. And if you address using it almost like a blue lens as a way to access and address a whole range of different challenges. So you think about solving things in the ocean, solve issues related to food and nutritional security. Solve issues in the ocean, address climate change. Solve issues in the ocean, address issues related to gender, etc. And here is a slide that connects and demonstrates the connectivity that SDG 14, the ocean goal, has with the rest of the other main challenges and goals you see there. The ocean and the problems we face in the ocean are very much derived from people. We have overfished it. We have overexploited it. We have put too much into it. We are impacting it on a day-to-day basis. Thankfully, the tide of that is changing, and I'll go into that in a little bit in a moment. But people are seen as the problem, but people are also the solution. People around the world rely on the ocean for their livelihoods, their well-being, their health, nutrition, and we need to make sure we are incorporating that and empowering those people, particularly in those on the front line of fighting climate change and biodiversity, so they're part of the solution. So one ocean, many solutions that the ocean can address, and that people are also part of that solution. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to say that I think we live in unprecedented times in terms of how high the ocean has risen on the political theater. Just a few examples here that I'd love to touch on. In the past year, we've got the UN Food System Summit. Blue food from ocean aquatic sources, were a mainstream and recognized part and parcel of that summit. The UN Ocean Conference, the second one was held in Lisbon last year, and some of you, I'm sure, attended that conference. The third one will be hosted in 2025 by France and Costa Rica, picking up and building on that momentum, and an opportunity to see where we are and how we're making progress across SDG 14. The UN Decade of Ocean Science, an incredibly important moment. And I want you to focus on the words. Often when people talk about the UN Decade of Ocean Science, they miss out these final three words: for sustainable development. This is incredibly important because we're not just going out and collecting and measuring and monitoring just for the sake of the physical and ecological properties of the ocean. We are connecting into real issues, real decisions, and make sure we're making those best decisions that are going to put ourselves on positive tipping points as far as the ocean is concerned. We had Montreal, COP15, where 194 countries signed up to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. I'll come to a little bit in a moment. Looking ahead, we've got India with the G20. Incredibly important. 45% of the world's exclusive economic zones sit within G20 countries. There is a process that was launched that we worked on within the World Economic Forum work that I am involved with to launch a new stakeholder group, the Ocean 20, O20. And I'm pleased to say that later in May, India is carrying that forward and continuing that theme of putting the ocean not just as a nice to have, but a must-have as far as these political discussions, especially when it comes to the economics. And I'll come to a little bit of that in a moment. G7, Japan is carrying on that tradition of a rich dialogue and leadership as far as the ocean is concerned. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look at the G7 communique that came out of the environment ministers meeting just recently. And there's some really good stuff in there that I think we would not have seen a decade ago. Continue momentum. APEC, the United States is the host of that. They're putting, particularly they're putting the issue of illegal fishing at the heart of that, and combating this $23 billion a year activity that we all know has a whole range of other activities that are associated with it, be it human rights abuses, drug trafficking, human trafficking, etc. And so this is obviously something that we need to get a handle on and address and tackle. That point really gets to what I was talking about earlier, going back and reflecting on that connectivity. That if you address illegal fishing, you can address a whole range of other issues that are related to, their importance to human beings. And finally, and not by no means least, is COP28 in the United Arab Emirates, where for the first time we have an ocean climate dialogue that is at the heart of the negotiations, not on the fringes. And I'm sorry to say that it took 27 COPs to get to this point, but we're really pleased now that that's art. And I'll tell you why that's so significant in a moment. Important to relate that all of these are connected. You may have often heard this phrase that there's no Paris without Montreal. What I mean by that is you cannot have the climate change and tackle the climate change without addressing biodiversity loss and making sure that the two going hand in hand. And so as we think about these big political and global processes, we need to think about that blue thread that certainly connects all of them on a more substantive level. I'm thrilled to say that outside of all these formal processes, through the vision of the Norwegian Prime Minister and the President of Palau in 2018, launched the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy. For the first time, outside of formal process in history, you have 17 heads of state supported by Peter Thompson, the Special Envoy for the Ocean, Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean, to really look at the state of the ocean, and how is it that how can we transition to a sustainable ocean economy? This was the challenge that the Norwegian Prime Minister, put to me 5 years ago, almost to the day, and said, I need to have a to-do list. What is that to-do list that we can then put out there for transitioning to a sustainable ocean economy? And so you can see a number of the heads of state and leaders that are there. I'm pleased to say that despite changes in government, that have and changes of leaders in some of these countries, that consistency, one of those consistencies has been the ocean. So it's amazing to think that despite changes and differences in political ideology, this unique opportunity of the ocean, that it may divide us physically, but connects us in so many ways. And I'll get into that a little bit more. The actual mission of the panel was around the sustainable ocean economy. But I want you to think about the 3 Ps here of protection, production, and prosperity. Protection, production, and prosperity. And these have been the 3 Ps have really been some of the underpinning tenets, as it were, of the panel, where it's aiming to really facilitate a better, more resilient future for people and planet. And so we need to be sure that we effectively. So the equation really is that if you effectively protect it, we can sustainably produce from it and equitably prosper. In December 2020, the Ocean Panel members, all 17 heads of state at the highest level, endorsed a series of transformations that were bound by these 5 core pillars. And underneath those, in total, you have 74 priority actions that are being committed to deliver by 2030 around ocean health, ocean wealth, ocean knowledge, decade of ocean science, ocean finance, and ocean equity, making sure that we're addressing some of the human dimensions as far as the ocean is concerned. I will say that this was all underpinned by one of the, in terms of recent times, the largest scientific exercise. Some of you in the audience were a part of that. Certainly Jan Gunnar was a part of that exercise, where we had over 250 scientists from 50 countries around the world that were contributing to this unprecedented generation of knowledge. So, when we talk about the work that you may be involved with, think about how the importance that it plays and underpinning a lot of these decisions and these commitments that these leaders, are making. When we think about, what the role that the ocean can play, and thinking about this in terms of a sustainable ocean economy and what this can deliver, you have 6 times more sustainable food by 2050, 12 million more jobs, 40 times more renewable energy by 2050. 15.5 trillion in benefits from sustainable ocean investments by 2050. These are some big wins and big opportunities that the ocean offers that really hasn't been recognized to date. We spend more time diagnosing the patient than really thinking about the benefits and investing in the benefits. And I'll get more to that in a moment. So when we think about this, we're thinking about this drive to 2030, bold action that is founded on the basis of protection, production, and prosperity. Protection, production, and prosperity. When we think about some of these wins, and Jan Gunnar had asked me to talk a little bit some of these sort of big ticket items that are in the broader domain at the moment. This was a piece of research that the Ocean Panel commissioned, and for the first time, this was summing up what are those solutions that can actually, if you sort of ocean-based climate solutions. And here are 5 of those that were determined in this piece of work. And the good news is that if you sum all these up, we're looking at about 21% of the greenhouse gas reductions that are required for the 1.5 degree target. 21%. And we're talking a range of activities in spaces that you're familiar with, on the coastlines, in the water itself, shifting diets, reducing emissions from maritime transport. And so this is an enormous amount that can be saved from this. But what we're talking about here, which is an astounding figure, is this is about taking about 2.5 billion cars off the road or closing all the coal-fired plants today. So these are big, significant numbers that the ocean offers. And I'm pleased to say, as a bit of a teaser for you all, that the Ocean Panel will be releasing an update of this report in September of this year in the margins of the General Assembly. And there'll be a greater degree of granularity, some additional sectors in there. And we hope that those numbers and the importance of those will continue to shine through. And this, of course, will come through in the Ocean and Climate Dialogues in COP28. And so great fodder in linking in this work and really putting the heart of the ocean at the heart of the climate negotiations and moving forward and creating those actions that will really help us get to the place that we know to get to with speed. I would be remiss if I didn't say a little bit about something else that happened last year at the end of, many of you are familiar with this commitment finally in Montreal that we're going to protect 194 countries, protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. All spaces, 30%. One of the areas that often is forgotten about is within that agreement is restoring 30% of ocean and coastal spaces by 2030 as well. So obviously we want to protect those areas that are incredibly important in the first start, but also we want to think about how we're going to restore those other spaces because we know the importance that nature plays in our lives, climate, et cetera. But part of this is that, and this was the headline commitment that came out of the panel, and this was a way to get a number of countries that were a little concerned about the 30% approach, was that the panel said we're gonna actually commit to sustainably manage 100% of our exclusive economic zones, so our waters out to the 200 nautical mile limit. And what this means is, yes, we're going to protect 30% of the ocean, but we're not going to leave the other 70% open for business. So this was the 100% approach, which is gathering traction by countries, outside the panel as well, and a number of at least all the countries have either committed to achieving this by 2025 or by 2027, with a number of countries that have just joined. But great momentum in sustainably planning and managing those waters to take this into account, an increasingly busier space in terms of the economic derivation there. Very important moment in the beginning of March at the UN, where finally we're on a track to come up with an agreement to manage and protect the high seas. So those areas beyond national jurisdiction, you can see the dark blue here on this map. These spaces that you see here, this is about 50% of the Earth's surface, roughly speaking. We're still, the challenge, of course, there is to actually implement it. But this has come a long way in order to get to this point, in a process that many countries have evolved to get to this point to manage, effectively manage the space. So very important space here. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the economics here and the importance that.
Christian,
yeah.
Please, you have to land soon.
Yeah.
Please.
I have one more slide. In terms of the economics, we talk about the investment here, and here's the investment benefit ratio we're talking about. So for every $1, you can expect about $5 back in terms of investment or through time. But our job is not done there by any stretch of the imagination. There are a number of activities and opportunities that are going to be required for us to address illegal fishing, continue the work and to land the harmful fishery subsidies agreement, addressing the global plastics treaty, amongst a range of others. The final thing I want to mention is really the issue of deep sea mining and the direction that is heading. We don't know enough about the deep ocean, certainly to embark on this process. And I think it behooves us all to think about a precautionary pause before moving in that direction. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity. Apologies, Jan Gunnar. I went probably a little longer than what you asked for, but I wanted to be sure that I covered some of these key aspects to set the tone for the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. And You receive a lot of applause from the audience and of course the great achievements that you and many others did when it comes to the ocean agenda the recent years. So stay with us, you are also part of the panel. So then I call upon all the panelists. Vidar Ulriksen, State Secretary, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries. Please just take the floor wherever you wish. Bente Pretlov, Program Director at the DNV, but also in the board of this UN Decade of Science that we heard, and the 3 important words for sustainable development. Asgeir Sørensen, Professor at NTNU, and also the leader of AMOS. You probably explain to us what that is later. And then Lotte Lindbjørg, Regional Manager, Northern Norway for the UN Global Compact of Norway. So we heard now the international kind of picture, and I wanted to start with you. We will have a conversation, short statements and interventions, but Vidar, I would like you to put the national policies in a way in the context of what's going on internationally and let you use a few minutes on explaining to us what are the priorities for Norway when it comes to ocean policies. Please.
Thank you. I think I will open with a statement that you might remember. The ocean is not the problem. The ocean is the solution. As a State Secretary of the Minister of Fisheries and Ocean Policy, I have the opportunity to work on issues related to shipping, waterways, maritime and marine research and innovation, coastal and port development, fisheries, seafood and aquaculture. And I would like to highlight a few of the government's policy areas. Green shipping is both a focus area in the Green Industrial Initiative and one of the first focus areas of the export strategy. The Norwegian ambition is to cut emissions from domestic shipping and fisheries in half by 2030. Norway has established several instruments for supporting the development of green shipping. This includes taxation of emissions of greenhouse gases from both domestic shipping, funding and research and development, and public grants for investment in technologies and infrastructure. Green requirements in public tenders for ferries can be said to have laid the foundation for green shipping in Norway. Today, more than 80, almost 1/3 of our ferries have batteries installed, and state aid have been awarded to more than 100 onshore power projects. Requirements on emissions for various new segments is an important part of our government policy going forward. It is important to keep in mind that green shipping is still at an early stage. Technologies are still being developed and more infrastructure is needed. The Ministry of Climate and Environment is currently working on a national plan for making alternative fuels available in shipping. It will be published this spring. The plan will look at the possible scenarios for green shipping going forward to 2030 and to 2050. Hydrogen is an important solution. I'm very pleased that Enova last year supported hydrogen projects in the maritime sector with over 1 billion Norwegian kroner, both to ship projects and the production of hydrogen. Green shipping is also high on the agenda internationally. Norway looks favorably on the EU Commission's proposal for stricter policies as a follow-up of the Fit for 55. At the International Maritime Organization, work is underway to establish a revised greenhouse gas reduction strategy in July this year. These developments help build a market for green shipping and will strengthen research and development of these technologies. In the years ahead, the ocean industries will have to see a massive green transition. Gender equality is high on our agenda. Today, women represent only 1.2% of the global seafarer workforce. In Norway, the number is around 11%. The Norwegian government is working on a strategy for diversity and equality in the maritime sector. The strategy will address issues such as working conditions, attitudes at work, and work environment, harassment and recruitment. The strategy will be published this year and will also be in English. The government will encourage greater investment in offshore wind power. In March, we reached a milestone with our plans for offshore wind when the government announced the first competitions for projects areas in Norway, the areas southerly North Sea 2 and Utsira North. I look forward to today's panel discussions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Vidar. And there are so many topics concerning the ocean, so we have decided to select a few, and we will start out with green shipping. And you also used quite some time on green shipping. And I was also inspired by Lauren's way of activating the audience during the conversation, so I just notify you that I will address you soon. But first to Bente, and I think Lotte thereafter. Green shipping, big ambitions, we heard that, and also a development that has started. Are there obstacles that you see that we should mention, that we need to overcome to actually get to these goals?
Yeah, definitely obstacles, but many opportunities as well. We see now, so as was mentioned, it is really the fuel. So what fuel is going to decarbonize shipping, which is the sort of the nugget here. We do see that we expect that these fuels will be available in 3 to 8 years, and we actually already see in the order book of new fuels that it's ships that can actually operate on these new fuels has tripled from 2019. So we definitely see things happening here. But there are some significant challenges, both on board the ships, onshore, and with the market that needs to be resolved. So it's the sort of technology, what fuel. There, as you said, we got methanol, we got ammonia, we got hydrogen, we got fuels with CCS options and so on. How this is going to be very costly for the maritime sector to fit on board. And the industry is also trying to grapple with the costs and the insecurity or as to uncertainty as to what fuel is going to take off.
So with that uncertainty being in the private sector of what will be the technology, what will be the fuel solution, is that hampering the development because you don't know if it will be ammonia or hydrogen or other solutions?
Well, the industry will be worried to be left with sort of stranded assets in a way, so to actually put the bets on the wrong technology. And it's not only the technology on board. As I said, there were three perspectives here. There's also what's going to be happening on land. So getting that right infrastructure for the fuel in the ports and the full sort of supply chain in order. And finally, one thing is what the owners of the ships can do. But of course, the cargo owners has a huge responsibility to put a demand on green shipping. And unless you have the demand, because they also are the ones that sort of put demands on on timing and the logistics and so on, which also impact on energy efficiency and so on of these ships. The whole sort of chain of things needs to actually fit together.
Yeah, thank you. I'll ask Lotte to come in. You are the most Arctic person of us in this debate, at least. The perspectives here on green shipping, green corridors, what do you see?
Yeah, well,
The challenges are quite similar to what has been mentioned already. The costs and the risks of investments in infrastructure, for instance, causes a lot of uncertainties in the Arctic as well. And we have a lot of smaller businesses here that are not able to take these investments. And of course, when we are speaking of hydrogen, this is a highly energy intensive production to produce in the north as well. And we are headed towards energy deficit in the north or Norway. So we have a lot of projects when it comes to transitioning to the greener solutions that are already turned down in the north, and that causes a lot of uncertainty. So if and when we have a larger scale of, for instance, hydrogen, which the larger vessels at sea would need, that would also demand a lot of infrastructure building in the north as well, with fueling stations and tankers and so on. So that's a huge issue in the north, and with the shipping emissions being around 30 to 40% in Bodø and Tromsø, for instance, that is of the total emissions, that is quite a huge challenge here.
Oscar, you asked for the floor.
Yes, I think this green shift in shipping and decarbonization is also an example where collaboration works. Because this was actually decided by UN, by the IMO, that we should reduce the emissions.
International Maritime
International,
Organization.
yes. And this is also targets for 2050. EU and also different companies has also said that they are going to improve this also by 2030. But this is also an example where it's not only, I would say, you are addressing a global challenge, but this is also a huge opportunity to take new business positions. That is both on the demand side to deliver fuels, and part may be electric by batteries for domestic, but definitely not for deep sea shipping yet. We also see that it's about how Norway could contribute with blue hydrogen products. So that is also part of this transition. But I will really challenge ourselves to use Norway as a laboratory where we could actually develop the coast, making fuel station along the coast and creating this as a new way. And where also even Svalbard can be a part of this. And very important here is that you could actually solve two problems simultaneously. One is to create green energy distributed in different places, and you also creating your battery by producing green fuels. So this can be a solution on Svalbard, it can be a solution on islands, and we can also even export this. And this is an area where Norway is good: energy, transportations, logistics, oceans. So I see this as a huge opportunity for Norway.
So
Jan Gunnar.
I wanted to bring you in actually, because you have the international lenses on, Christian. And honestly, would you regard Norway as a driver or a follower?
No, so I think as a driver, and I just want to pick up on Ashkar's point there, because I think it's a really important one. This notion of and something that we've tried to push, certainly within the panel, is using some of those states that have a particular amount of expertise as a laboratory. So don't underestimate the opportunity and the value of bringing countries from around the world to come see what is an electrified fleet looks like. What is the latest in ship design to get that momentum and energy and the required investment, and attract the required investment for those transitions that are going to be required. We tried to do this with the there's a lot of interest in some of the island states in the Pacific. Great opportunities for exchanges, and using Norway as a laboratory for that.
So, State Secretary, or Vidar, if I may, I already called you Vidar, sorry for that. Are we inviting the world to Norway?
We have ambitions to lead on in the transitions for the green shipping. But I don't think we are able to say what will be the best solution today. Maybe it's something that we yet didn't know about. But when the first Norwegians crossed the Atlantic for more than 1,000 years ago, it was without polluting the atmosphere. And that will be something that we have to achieve in our time. But I think that both hydrogen, electricity, of course wind, and ammonia maybe for the bigger vessels, but we shall not rule out the possibility for taking use of thorium. Salt smelting technology has already been launched on international shipping. But DNV did research in 2018, I think it was established that 30% of the world transcontinental shipping represent 80% of the pollutions. And of course we have to do what we can from also the small vessels, but the bigger shipping vessels can reduce emission with a very high quantities.
Yeah, so you asked for the floor. I would like to address the audience and give the audience a chance. On the green shipping issue, are there any that would like to ask questions around that? I don't see. Yeah, there is a hand in the very back there. Yeah, please tell us who you are and make a question.
Hi, I'm a student at the university in Tromsø. A lot has been talked about, especially yesterday, about the importance of attracting and keeping young people in the north. And I think one of the biggest challenges when it comes to that is the fact that the Arctic regions are a bit isolated. They're not very geographically integrated. Considering the state of the current technology and research within the naval industry and green shipping, could that potentially be a solution for geographically integrating not only the Arctic part of the Nordic countries, but maybe like the Arctic states in general, like the same way someone takes a train to go from, I don't know, Germany to France, could someone eventually take a ferry to go from, I don't know, Tromsø to Bodø?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So is this something that could attract young people to the Arctic? Maybe Oscar, you were up first.
Yeah, I will say definitely. And from NTNU, we have been looking in also regarding the green shipping. But and what was mentioned yesterday is that if you look to Norway in particular, we are the port to the Arctic. We also, probably when you are in your living time, you will experience the first time an Arctic Ocean that is open during the summer. So that will create a completely new type of connections. And I think here in the Arctic, we have a special that we are remote. And that is coming back to my point, is that we can actually use also ship technology, that also how could we develop technology that we could scale up, and we can go also to remote areas also in Africa, in Latin America, again with the same, using renewables together with establishing fuel, and then you both electrify, you make it digital, and you become a part of the network. And I think just the point is that Norway could be a test bench for that. So that's why, but I'm actually concerned that Norway is, since we are a super nation in a way regarding the oceans, that we are sitting we are sitting too laid back, because this is going fast. I'm currently sitting in a board of directors in Maersk Center for Zero Carbon Shipping. The big shipping owners has put this on the agenda, and this is and they are creating a demand and deliver. So while we are talking, I'm afraid Norway can lose, I would say, market positions. And
Oscar is not laid back, as you can hear. That's for sure, and that's good. That was a compliment. Bente first.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there is a lot of things happening, and I completely agree with you, Oscar. I just wanted to make reference actually to our Nordic Council of Ministers project that we are responsible for, which is looking for a roadmap for basically zero emission fuels and low carbon shipping. And there are more than 40 members of this project. It only started last autumn, and more members are coming on. And that is just showing the huge interest in this as an opportunity, wanting to actually contribute towards making that roadmap to get this right. And it's open for more members. So there are a lot of initiatives now.
So I'm gradually leaving this topic, but I would let Lotte have the chance to say something, and you, if you would like to have a last comment, Vidar.
Yeah.
But Lotte, please.
Yeah,
So-
with regards to younger people being attracted to the Arctic part, I would say that these smaller businesses that are actually creating solutions and building new business models here in the north is a potential for attracting younger people to come and work and live here in the Arctic, because they want to work in businesses that are developing sustainable solutions. So I think that is also a huge potential for the Arctic.
Thank you, Vidar.
We are working, as mentioned from Bente, with green corridors that allow shipping to refuel in boats and of the most used transport corridors in the North Sea, and it will also include Northern Norway, of course.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any more hands on green shipping, so I'll leave that part. And now we will dive into technology, sensors, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, the ocean of new opportunities that comes along with new technology. And it's very natural for me to address you, Asgeir, first. Could you take us into your universe? I mean, your intellectual and educational universe, where you have so many projects concerning the future, and try to get the audience to understand what maybe seems futuristic and beyond the horizon for many people is maybe realistic.
Yes, and as also already said, Norway is a huge, we say, player regarding the blue economy. We have a super cluster. We are making, I'm completely agree, the oceans is creating opportunities. And as also said yesterday, even by the Prime Minister, we are supposed to have ambitions. That is regarding value creation, but also management. And Norway is having responsibilities from what is happening from pole to pole with our presence. And what we have actually done in collaboration with partners in a Center of Excellence, that is a framework developed by the Research Council of Norway, together with DNV, Equinor, SINTEF, and also, I would say, very much partners in crime is University of Tromsø, where we have developed what we also call now the observation pyramid. And that means that we said, and it was actually Equinor that put that as a target for us. How could you contribute to harvest 10 times more data from the oceans at the cost of 1/10 using, and how will you solve it? So what we started to do is to work very carefully with the underwater robotics, with the unmanned ships, with manned ships, aerial drones, and also the last step was to take the satellites. And in January last year, we launched the first microsatellite that is going up now, being one of the 1 million that is coming. But the whole thing is that by looking into the capability to map data in spatial and temporal domain, and the ocean is huge, as Christian showed us, and how we should understand all these processes, the effect of climate, and the ice coverage, not ice coverage, and also human activities, means that we had to raise up this and combine these observations with models. So the dream we have is to create yr.no underwater, where we could have a full picture. And we ended up not having 10 times more data at the cost of 1/10, but millions or more data. So in order to deal with this flow of data, we have to work to also learn from the users of this data, but using artificial intelligence, supercomputing capacity. And that's where we are now opening up. So I'm saying that this is giving us a completely new...
So, yeah. So I think that was very illustrative, and I'm tempted to ask you, Vidar, if that's the future with all information in real time, what can that mean for management? I mean, we have management systems that by nature need to be somewhat static, and they are, of course, turned over every 5 years or so. But could this open new doors that are very exciting for management?
both research and management. Also, sustainable management, of course, is the bottom line here. And knowledge is the way we can do it in a proper way. My telephone has 10 times more capacity to store both pictures and text than my first computer. That costs 10 times more. But it's just a big picture of the possibility technologies gives in maritime surveillance. And of course in use of search and rescue operation, pollutions. But I like to point out that we have it started as a small project in Norway, the Barents Watch, that surveillance the northern areas and all the Norwegian water as long. Now we have a new led project by the UN Development Agency that we call Do Justice.
That was mentioned here earlier today, so the
Yeah,
audience
the polar lanes of the satellites go from the north to the south. So we cover the whole planet. And for 1 month ago, the 23rd of March, it was a conference in Copenhagen. So now we have passed 60 countries that have joined the Blue Justice Program and a member there. And I think that will be very beneficial for developing countries to get help from.
Yeah, so on that topic, developing countries, because now I'm trying to be the lawyer or the devil, and maybe that's for you, Christian, or whoever, with all this data, which is advanced, it's technology, it's databases, and so on, are we managing to leave no one behind in that kind of world? Or is this increasingly get a challenge for actually having no one left behind? Could anyone reflect on that? And then I have, maybe Christian, and then I have a very short question to you. We heard in the last session about debris in space. You put out these millions and millions of sensors, not only you, but the community. Are you concerned about debris in the ocean? So, Christian first.
I think indeed we are still leaving people behind, without a doubt. We're in an exploratory phase, but this is what the Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development is very much about. It's about getting those countries that may not have the technology or the capacity to really be involved and to participate in this exploration and understanding much better 2/3 of the planet. So we certainly have the wherewithal, the technology. We just need to be sure that we are sharing that equitably and engaging those countries to be a part of it, so that we indeed, by the time we get to 2030, that we have this very sort of active ecosystem of technology that is collecting data that is going to benefit all.
So I hear an optimistic voice here. Is that correct?
Indeed, without a doubt. Yeah, this
Good.
is the age of tech. The State Secretary pulled out his mobile phone. Incredible technology, citizen science, a whole range of activities that we can have people involved with as far as data collection is concerned.
And it's waterproof. Your mobile.
Indeed.
Let's get to the debris issue.
Yeah.
Short, very
short. I must say also the previous talk, that is food for thoughts. Because we have seen too often that what we try to develop is a solution becomes a part, instead of the solution becomes a part of the problem instead. So in order to have regulations, in order to take that serious, is definitely a concern. And I think that is also about regulations. How do we deal with that? But the business opportunities is huge. But I will also mention, because one thing is having all these observations, but this is going to transfer to information and then to decision. And I think it's also about who is going to own this data. Is it Google? Is it Amazon? What is because today the big five ones have most of the information, because the gold is in the data. So I'm actually asking Norway,
okay.
What ambition do Norway have?
So you ask question, who should own the data? And I would like to have an answer from maybe some in the panel. Bente, who would you prefer owning the data?
You're asking me? who
Yeah,
should
you're
own
on the
data?
board for the UN Decade. You're
Yeah.
also on the national board
Yeah.
for the UN Decade.
Yeah.
I mean, you can resist, but if you have any
Well, I wanted
favorite?
to actually comment on a little bit what was said about the decade and the importance of leaving no one behind. Because I actually, as part of the advisory board, I actually sit and evaluate all of these programs and projects that come in for endorsement. And I can firmly say that leave no one behind is a firm sort of requirement for those projects that are endorsed under the decade. So there's a huge focus. I think who should own the data? Very difficult question. I'm part of there's actually a data group under the decade looking into this. You do have a lot of challenges with private data, public data, standards for sharing, and I'm sure that Oscar is aware of all of these challenges. So not straightforward.
Global Compact, are they working with this data ownership liability issues?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitively. We have the Ocean Stewardship Coalition and also some work on marine spatial planning, which also touches upon data collection and ownership and, of course, all these challenges. I'm not that into that work, so maybe you are, Bente, but we are definitely working on that.
Okay, we have 6 minutes left. I just leave the question, is it a difference if it's a private ownership or a governmental ownership to ocean data, or maybe the real world says it's kind of both and integrated? But I just leave that. Audience, with the 6 minutes left, any questions? Yeah, Petter, Nore.
It's a reference to the first part of the discussion on green shipping. We are forgetting that just under our noses, we have a first in the world. We have the first hydrogen-based ferry system that will link Bodø with Lofoten. I mean, this is a world first, and it's run by Norwegian Technologies, and it's going to be, I don't know where the hydrogen will come from. I don't think that is decided, but of course that's part of what the government is trying to do, namely to make a supply chain for hydrogen along the coast. But all I'm drawing your attention to is that this is something that is a world first, and it has lots of industrial perspectives, and also one of my master's students actually wrote a thesis on this particular.
So Peter, this is an example that I think Christian addressed, that we should show cases, illustrations, and also, Vidar, you said that we should, as a nation, show the world.
This is a unique opportunity.
Do you have a particular question as well?
No,
with respect to that?
No, I just dawned on me that this dimension was sort of missing a little bit. The local, let's try to take something local.
And sometimes we forget what's closest to us, so thank you for remembering that and reminding us. You also said 1/3 of the ferries were electrical, and that's also in an international context, that's a huge number, so we can be proud of some of this development. There was a hand back there, wasn't it? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Camilla. I come from Center for Blue Governance, which is a research group at Aalborg University in Denmark, and I'm also part of the Heinok Dialogue Academy. So my question is quite pragmatic, and it concerns maritime governance. So is there any, and we can start on Norway, but we could also take it out to the more global Arctic. Is there any maritime governance structures that challenge or even hinder sustainable societal development in the high north or the Arctic?
Anyone that would like to address that?
I'm not quite sure what is the question. Can you repeat it?
So the question was is there, or do you have an example of any maritime governance structures that challenge or hinder societal development in the high north?
Yes, we have. And I will put it this way, we have to be very careful with what kind of shipping we allow in our northern areas. So the Maritime Coastal Administration in Norway, of course, have a strict focus on that the ship is equipped and constructed in a way that it is safe to operate in northern areas. And also the search and rescue operation in this area is very challenging. It's very large distances. You cannot rely on getting assistance on an hour-to-hour basis. We're talking about days. So I would say the maritime surveillance is very accurate. The Bear and Watch program, as I mentioned earlier, is helping us to keep track on what ships is trafficking this area.
So there are limitations on behavior. I interpreted your question differently, if there is any limitations or restrictions, and my answer to that would be I don't know that exist actually. So now we have two answers to that one. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I'm a master's student in Arctic Studies in Paris, and also I work for an NGO on ocean sustainability, and I'm also a member of the High North Dialogue Academy here. So my question is, basically there's been the Treaty on the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction that was successfully negotiated in March, bringing the possibility of implementing marine protected areas beyond national jurisdiction. So my question is, do you see the possibility of establishing such marine protected areas in the Arctic, specifically maybe in the high Arctic where there's already a moratorium on fishing in the region? Thank you.
Thank you. Would that be to the State Secretary or Christian? We are over time, Frode, I'm asking you. You are the head of everything here. Can I go 5 minutes?
Yeah, 3.5.
3.5, almost 4. Yeah. Would you?
It's not under my ministry's responsibility, but I think it will be very natural that we look on protection areas in the Arctic areas.
I saw Christian was moving his head,
Yep.
so maybe he has an opinion on that. But you will get the chance. I'll give you 30 seconds, and that is 30 seconds, to give your final take-home message. Christian, starting with you.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great opportunity. That's the only way we're going to get to 30%, is by having and protecting some of these areas in spaces beyond national jurisdiction. And so I think the key moment now is implementation. My final message is the job is not done on many of these international treaties. I encourage you to get actively involved and make sure we get them over the line.
Thank you. Oscar.
Well, we are rounding off now Amos, which is a tremendous, I would say, educational impact. So that is also one thing to remember, the importance of education wherever you do it. But one take-home message for me from 10 years being a leader for Amos is my concern about threat against marine biodiversity or biodiversity in general. And a part of this, in order to deal with these dilemmas, most of these solutions are also in the oceans. We heard yesterday about the green colonization. I believe offshore wind is a good solution to that crime going on now in mid-Norway. But nevertheless, also given the previous talk, we must make sure what we ever do, that what we believe is a part of the solution, not become a part of a bigger problem. So I think that is also should be a motivation for everybody to go for knowledge but be holistic in your view.
Thank you, Oscar. Lotte, please.
Yes, I would like to highlight the need for cooperation to tackle these huge challenges, and especially on a regional level. So the government has recently launched these climate partnerships agreements with certain sectors, for instance, the maritime industry. I would suggest that we take these models to a regional level and try to solve the challenges together with the industry and the municipalities to make sure that we address them correctly, and also that we ensure that all relevant stakeholders are included and actually heard to prevent Fosen cases around the north.
Yeah, good advice there. Bente, please.
Well, I would like to add to taking the holistic perspective and the focus on collaboration. The one other element I would like to add to that is trust. Because in order to have good collaboration, we need trust between those that meet the different decision makers, the different stakeholders, and we need to have trust in the scientific and the sort of knowledge basis that we're making our decisions upon.
Yeah, and you last and finally.
I will lead the partnership, the climate partnerships, and we have the first meeting tomorrow. But I would say that knowledge is the key to sustainable management. When we have to manage the ocean resources in a way that we can produce more food, stop polluting, and start harvesting.
Yeah, I think it was a quite red thread through these kind of statements. So thank you all. Give them a big hand.